I was sitting at my desk and I just said to myself, there's just no way I'm waking up on my next birthday not doing over 100,000 a year. There's just no way. It is finished and over. And it was such a strong feeling in me. And then I started to realize all the mindset things that I had going on inside of me that was stopping me.
Hi, welcome to the podcast. Today is interview day, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to my guest. Leslie Kuster is a multiple seven-figure e-commerce brand owner whose business, Back From Bali, offers women bohemian chic clothing ethically made in Bali. Leslie's well-earned knowledge is born from experience. In her mid-50s, she was able to ricochet her Back From Bali clothing business from five figures to earning millions. She is now helping other women entrepreneurs of all ages realize their dreams and grow their businesses. Leslie empowers women to live their true freedom by teaching them how to create a business that aligns with their deeper core values, enabling women to work in a way that brings ease and flow into their daily lives so they can be truly fulfilled, which resonates so deeply, I know, with listeners of this show. Leslie, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
It's just so beautiful hearing about the empowering way that you are helping women claim their place in the world of money, of earning, of potential, of growth. And I would love to know, first of all, where were you born and raised? And then where, I know you're not in New York City as originally had been listed when we had connected, but I'd love to hear kind of where your travels have taken you in your life.
Oh yeah, sure. So I was actually I'm in Florida right now, this moment. I was born in Florida, but I was raised in New Jersey, and New York City has been pretty much my home. But I married a Swiss man and I have been living in Zurich, Switzerland for the last 20 years. And I just retired him a year ago and have imported him into the United States. We're pretty nomads now. For the last 18 months, we've been traveling the world, from Africa to Europe to US. We'll be going to Bali in February. So we're completely nomads right now. And part of that is also my business is I manufacture women's clothing in Bali, Indonesia. And so I've always loved traveling, and that's how I launched my business, was just from a trip I went on many years ago, like 30 years ago, and traveled to Bali, Indonesia, and came back to the US and needed to get back to going to a job again. I was doing PR at the time, working in New York City, and I just didn't want to get a job. And I got back and I was sitting on my bed and I was like, what else can I do here? And I just had this idea, I had seen beautiful clothing when I was there in Indonesia. And I just thought, what would happen? Like, what would happen if I jumped back on the plane and go back to Bali and bought things and brought it back? And I did, because my motivation was so strong not to get a job again, that is exactly what I did. And 30 years later, I still have a business from Bali, Indonesia.
I love this story. I love how you went within, thought about like, what do I really want? And it almost started from what you didn't want as being the prompt. And that can be equally, if not more powerful when we're wanting to make shifts in our life.
Oh, yeah.
You actually took action on it, though. That's so impressive. So many of us think, oh, wouldn't it be great? I could do this or that. And then we just keep moving along the same way and maybe find ourselves complaining, and we get caught in that rut of complaining. So how did you make that leap of, this could be an idea because I really don't want to go into this job? How did you then transition to, okay, I'm just going to do this? What was up? Did
Because
you have a plan?
your dissatisfaction has to be stronger than your fear of doing something else. That's really the way all of us, unfortunately, are programmed, that we only make changes when we're forced to, when we're sick, when we're divorced, when we lost our money, when something really bad happens, then we're forced to make changes. So in my case, I mean, really, the idea of getting a job again was so horrible to me because it just was never my thing to work, in that way. I wasn't very good at it, to tell you the truth. And it just wasn't my thing. And so my desire was so strong not to get a job that it was easy for me to overcome the fear of going back to Indonesia and just like trying something new. So I think this is the answer, is that we need to have that burning desire. It needs to be so strong inside of us. That wanting has to be so strong that you will do anything. But you're right. The trouble is, most of us, even if we have those strong desires or strong things that we're so unhappy with, we still don't make any changes and we still don't take actions. And if there's anything to say, taking action is the most important thing you could possibly do in your life. But of course, it's the scariest thing to always do in your life. And why I did it and didn't do it earlier, or why I did it and other people don't do it, I think, again, we have to know who we are, which means we need to know how we feel. We need to really be in touch with what's going on the inside, like really deeply. And when you make the time to do that, then you could really know what you're really dissatisfied with. And when you get honest with yourself and you really are honest about what you don't like or what you're dissatisfied about, and it's like verbally out there, it's written on paper, you say it to the tree you're hugging or whoever, or your friend, then it's hard to turn back on that again. So it's all about getting honest with ourselves.
You are speaking my language. It
Oh,
is
good.
about that inner world. The inner world controls everything. And it's something that really gets louder as we move through the ages. I turned 50 in July. And so I'm noticing the things I'm willing to say yes to are getting more limited because I want to say yes to a select group of really important things to me. And that allows me to say no to other things. Whereas through my life, and I think a lot of women can identify, we will just say yes and say yes and say yes because we don't want to let other people down. And in that process, we end up letting ourselves down. And then we find dissatisfaction down the road. So I love that you said yes to yourself so early in your adult journey, because you're in your mid 50s now, correct?
Yeah, I'm actually 65 right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yes. Now I'm
Well, you
65. So
definitely look much younger than that.
thank you. So I said yes to that was in my early 30s, what we're talking about.
Okay.
I said yes to that because one of my strongest values was freedom. And I did know that. And I had just traveled in Indonesia and I had experienced freedom. And so coming back and getting a job was the opposite to me of having freedom. So I was really aware when I was younger, how much freedom meant to me. And so I made a decision that I was going to do everything I possibly can so I can keep my freedom. And freedom to me meant living where I wanted to live, getting up when I wanted to get up, doing what I wanted to do with my day. But then what happened to me in my early 50s was a whole other thing going on. And what happened then was I had my freedom. I had a business. I was somewhat profitable, but I was only doing under 100,000 a year in revenue, top line revenue. Okay. And in my early 50s, I started to feel I am simply not really reaching the potential that I knew that was really inside of me. And I was limiting myself. And I started to get honest. Okay, that's how it started. And I started to get honest and started to question a lot of the beliefs and, of course, mindset issues that I was carrying around all these years that was limiting me. And I didn't know they were, because I thought they were, quote, my truth. Okay. And this was for me the second awakening, so to speak. And it was during that time of me getting really honest with myself that and then taking action on it, that ricocheted my business from 5 figures to where it is now, which is multiple 7 figures. It was my mindset shift that did it.
And so, okay, this is great. I want to dig into that. And before I do, in a really brief period, I know like it's hard to take a time capsule of all those, like of 20 years of business, but you stepped off the plane in Bali when you went back. What were what did that trajectory look like of you? Like, I'm going to start a business, and then you became profitable. What were the first few things you did? And then where did it end you up?
Yeah. So I went back literally with a duffel bag. Okay. Because back, this is 30 years, 25 years ago. You could bring back, my point is, it wasn't a 50-pound limit
Right.
back then. Okay. So
I remember.
I was able to come back with like huge duffel bags.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. So I just went back, brought it back to New York City, and I started doing flea markets and street fairs and holiday markets. And I did this for a really long time. I did this for 18 years.
Wow.
And so that joke that it took 20 years to be an overnight success was completely my story. That is my story. So I did everything to keep my freedom. And, I also went into wholesaling for a while, awful business, and do not recommend it to anybody at all. But, I sold into Bloomingdale's and I sold into big stores as well. And this was what I was basically doing I then went into designing. I had no designing experience. I had no business experience. I had no plan. I had no coach. I didn't have any of those things, which is why it took me 25 years to have a very successful business, because I didn't do all of those things. I didn't even know I should be doing all of those things. It never even occurred to me. So that was really what kept me back. But again, it wasn't exactly that I didn't have the coach and I didn't have, a marketing plan and I didn't have a funnel. It wasn't really those things. It was my mindset that was making me think things like, if I became really successful in my business, I will no longer have my freedom.
I think a lot of people think that.
Exactly. If I'll get too busy, I'll get too involved, I won't be able to have my yoga classes, or I won't be able to go on my vacations, or, I'll become a money person, or I'll be seen as greedy, or, all of these things that kind of stop us. Another one of mine was really strong is I am a spiritual person. I'm really spiritual. And therefore, if I go after being like a big businesswoman, well, that's going to completely conflict with being a spiritual person. So one of the things I did in that moment of mine, because it literally was a moment, it was not a development. It was not like something I thought about for a day, a week, or a year. It was literally a moment of sitting in my little office. I was in Switzerland because my husband is Swiss. We were living in our little cute apartment we had. I was in my office. I was sitting at my desk, and I just said to myself, there's just no way I'm waking up on my next birthday not doing over 100,000 a year. There's just no way. It is finished and over. And it was such a strong feeling in me. And then I started to realize all the mindset things that I had going on inside of me that was stopping me, that because I want to keep how my life is, I don't want to do that. So there was a lot of, I want this, but I don't want this. And I started to change everything into an and instead of a but. I literally got out a piece of paper and, so for example, I want my freedom, but but success is going to take it away. It was, I want freedom and success is going to give me more of it. So I just put everything on its head and just started to look really at my mindset issues, my money story, how I was raised in my family, what I was taught, what a woman should earn, what a man should earn, what I should be doing, what he should be doing. My story was definitely that a value of a man was to make a lot of money, and a value of a woman was to find a man who made a lot of money. So this was the story I grew up with in my home, in my home growing up. And so therefore my thought always went, my husband should be the one pulling in the big bucks. And it's okay that I make some money. Of course, my mom worked. My mom even had her own business, but it was not really, she was not expected to actually make any money actually out of it, So this is how I also was, it was my husband's responsibility, not my responsibility. My responsibility is other things. His is that. And I don't know if I want to be seen as that kind of person, I don't want to know if I want to be seen as someone who's quote greedy or unfeminine or all of these things. And I started to just throw all of these ideas on its head and really question, like, well, why can't I be the one to buy us our dream home? Why can't I be the one who, becomes completely independent? Why can't I be that? And I also started to look at my friends who grew up in similar kind of mindsets that I grew up in. And I looked at my who did marry wealthy men. And I started to look at their lives as well. And what I started to notice was they had no control over their own life. And that even though maybe they were married to someone who was extremely wealthy, they actually weren't, because they had no access to the money, actually. They couldn't literally go get the money. They were maybe given money once a month from their husbands, or he paid their credit card bill or whatever. But having actual access to that money, control over that money, investment of that money, knowing where it was, what accounts it was in, all of those things, they didn't actually have it. So truthfully, they had no money. And I also saw that a lot of these women were in unhappy marriages and yet would not leave because they simply didn't have the means to do, or they were fearful to do it.
And this feels like,
right?
Yeah, this feels like it also plays into, what was their level of actual satisfaction in developing and having their own purpose outside of, in the home. There's something about having something more that we are investing ourselves in. And like you say, having that access, there's an empowerment to it. Is that what you mean when you're talking about the Princess Tower?
Exactly. It's exactly what I mean. I have a book coming out, 7 Keys to 7 Figures. And the Princess Tower is as we all imagine, we say the Princess Tower, you can imagine a woman up in a tower up there waiting for Prince Charming to come and save her. And we, even if you're 20 years old, this is still a fantasy that is still present in our day and age right now, and it certainly is in women in my own age and older as well. Whether we want to admit it or not, it is definitely prevalent everywhere. It's in our culture, in our movies, and everything. And the trouble with it is it does not make women independent. And the trouble with not having independence is you can't make your own choices in your life. And that really is the bottom line. So before you mentioned something that this can create women not to have their own interest or their own way of creating something for themselves outside of the home. But I really believe it has to be financial. Even the women who have amazing or on incredible boards, for example, unpaid, or who are doing phenomenal charity work in the world, unpaid, will not have the financial independence to really get them to stand on their own feet.
Yes.
And I just started to see this it's just keeping women where we are. And without financial independence, we're just not going to make any real changes in our own lives or in the world.
And money in the hands of women does not only ameliorate their life and their family's life, but it improves the lives of so many countless women. There's like a huge ripple effect that happens
Yes.
when money is in the hands of conscious women. And so, why? I mean, I know the answer. I just want you to share your answer to this. Why is it so taboo to say, as a woman, to say that you want to have money?
Let me tell you a story of what can happen. And it has to do with shaming. So my husband had dinner with one of his best friends. And shortly before that, I had been very scared to let anybody know about the sales of my business, okay? Because I didn't want them to think I was greedy, basically, or bad, okay? And so I was very conscious not to tell people or do any of that. Well, when I passed the 7-figure mark, I decided I'm not doing this anymore. And I am actually going to put a post up on Facebook that my business just hit 7 figures, which was like this huge thing for me to be doing because it was scary to do this. And I did. So Heinz, my husband, went out to dinner with his friend to this pizza restaurant. And they were sitting there, and the friend, we'll just call him, Eric. Eric said to my husband, Heinz, I don't know if I should bring this up, but I just saw Leslie's post in Facebook, and I have to tell you, I didn't think she was that kind of person.
What?
And luckily, my husband Heinz came home and told me what he said, which I was so happy he did, because I can use this as an example of how women get shamed when they do talk about money, or they do express, their desire to have money, want money, and are proud of what they're earning. So why is it that it's so difficult for women to embrace this idea? Is because we do get shamed for it, as I did in this example. And also because it just is not part of what being feminine is considered. Being feminine is considered helping people, all right? That's more what women are supposed to do. You often hear what women who have businesses say things like, well, I would do this even if I didn't make any money. Well, why in the world would you even say those words?
Yeah.
Or money doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not a money person. Why would you? First of all, I'm just going to say very honestly, you're lying. This is a lie, okay? Because you're not honest enough with yourself to say what it is you want and what's of value to you. So I just feel that we need to free ourselves from this ridiculous idea that wanting money, having money, earning money, talking about money, understanding our income statements is not feminine. It is. It completely is. And without that, we're just going to stay dependent and continue to not have control over our lives or our world.
That is such a powerful story. And I love how, your husband's there advocating for you and sharing that with you. And it's like an unconscious response in a sense, because we've been socialized in this way for so very long. And so now I want to go back to this moment. And I love that you said it was a moment where you drew a line in the sand, where you said, this is the last year that I'm going to be earning the 6-figure mark. I am going to move forward now. So you made that decision. What was your next step? Because you mentioned something really interesting as you were describing that story about there were so many things that you didn't know that you should be doing, like getting help, finding coaching, etc. So what was your next move?
I had 2 businesses at the time. Both of them together did under 100,000 a year. So my first step was to realize that I needed to focus, and I needed to choose which business I was going to focus on. That was step number one. And I made a decision in that moment to let go of one of them. And that's a whole other story, because one of them was called Girl Power, which was an empowerment program for young girls, 7 to 13 years old, spiritual, helpful, feminine, all of those adjectives. And I had to decide, am I going to let that one go, or am I going to let Back From Bali, my women's clothing? And my head was like, of course you're going to let go of Back From Bali women's clothing. It's greedy and it's all about you and it's superficial. Like, what are you talking about? And the other is spiritual and helpful and feminine. And in my gut, I just felt my gut was saying Back From Bali. And I just said, okay, that's it. I'm giving up Girl Power. I'm closing all of my programs down. I'm just stopping them. And I felt literally chills going up my spine when I made that decision. And that was another learning experience, because my head, I thought my heart was saying, keep Girl Power. And it was my head saying, drop the other business. But as I found out, it was actually the opposite. So we trick ourselves. We trick ourselves all the time by the things we think are right. We think are this, we think are that, and they're not. So I decided, Back From Bali, here I go. This is what I'm doing, dropping the other. And so that was step number one. Well, actually, these are the keys in my book. My book is called 7 Keys to 7 Figures, because the first key is wanting it, getting honest with myself with what I wanted. The second key is focus. And I had to let go of one of the businesses. And then it brings us to the third key, which I call become a ferocious learner. And I then began jumping into, I went to, for example, a conference, Amazon conference, because I sell clothing, I sell online. I'm an e-commerce brand. And I went to a conference on Amazon. I flew across the country from New York to Seattle. I went to the conference by myself, and my mind was blown open there. I met all these people there. I met people who were doing 40,000 a year a month, not a year, 40,000 a month online. And I was so excited by the whole world, and I didn't know anything. And this is what we have to realize when we don't know what we don't know. And I know everyone hears that a lot, but it really is true. You can't possibly know what to do when you don't even know that is what you're supposed to be doing. You know, my understanding of e-commerce at the time, I would say, was like a -1, And so I went to the conference. At the conference was a speaker, this woman who was speaking, and I could not believe how much she knew about this stuff and how empowered she sounded and how interesting and everything. And so afterwards, I went up to her and found out she was a consultant. Okay. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll get her card. So I got her card, was so excited by the conference, so excited by all the notes I took. And I went back home, and I did what most people do, which is what we spoke about at the very beginning, which is nothing. Okay. I was all excited by the conference. I had a notebook full of all kinds of ideas. I probably did a few things from it, but mostly I did nothing. And about 6 months later, my husband Hines said, remember that lady you met? Why don't you give her a call? And I did. And that is what changed everything. Her name is Lisa Satora, and I work with her to this day. And this is about 11, 12 years ago we're talking.
Wow. That's incredible. Finding the people who have been there to learn from, to short circuit our growth. Because you're so right. We'll get these ideas very often, and then we stop to sit and analyze them and think about, okay, now let's just think about this. Let's just look over our notes. And then everything seems so big and we freeze because we're alone looking at all of this. I have been there myself countless times. Anytime starting something new. And what has helped me is exactly what you did, reaching out, finding the support, finding a mentor, finding a coach, finding a community of people to walk alongside. And that's what I provide as well. And so I just think it's so powerful that in all areas of our life, but especially something as impactful as creating a business that's going to generate income for you, that you will then be able to do incredible things with. What catapulted you then into the work that you're doing now in terms of wanting to put all these keys together? Like, obviously, you have so much wisdom to share now. And how are you giving back as well? Because I'm sure, because you had this other business that you were doing, did that kind of resurge in some way, or what are you focusing on now in that regard?
It's such a great question because that's exactly what happened. So, or I think it was about 5 years back. Business, I did it. Okay, I did it, and
Yeah.
by the way, it gave me more freedom, not less freedom. So that was another thing I realized.
Oh, right, because you
um,
can hire a team. It's
yeah,
not all up to
you have to
you.
hire a team, and it does not take away your freedom being successful.
Yeah.
So that was a great realization that I had. But around about 4 or 5 years ago, I just started to feel that I have all this wisdom inside. I have all this learning inside. I have all of these experiences inside, of how I actually did what I did.
Mm.
And I want to share it. I want to give it because, yeah, I did have this other side of me. I also have my master's in clinical social work. And I have a very strong background in spirituality and psychology and self-growth, transformation. And so I was feeling very isolated in my businesses because it's just is only around, well, even business now is still behind the computer. Back then it wasn't as much as it is
Yeah.
now. But I was feeling more isolated and I was feeling very invisible because I had my business was good, my clothing is selling. But me personally, Leslie personally I felt very, very invisible. And it was painful to me because I felt like I have all this to share, as so many of us women feel that and do and have so much wisdom inside of us. And there's for so many of us, this like, unfulfilled feeling inside of us that we want to give more and bring our gifts out. And that was my story. And I did the smart thing, which is I found a program. I found another mentor, Claire Zamet, who teaches feminine power. I love her programs. And I then started on this next stage of my life. And again, another story around that is, this invisibility that I was feeling, which I know is also a very huge common theme for many, many women. I would say 90% of women have this feeling of invisibility because we haven't yet learned how to really come out because it's scary to come out, such as my experience on Facebook, for example. And so I remember just tell you another quick story. I was sitting with a friend of mine having some hot chocolate where I was in Switzerland, and she told me that a women's group had reached out to her to ask her to teach a writing workshop in their upcoming workshop programs. And I immediately went into, why doesn't anybody reach out to me? I am not asked? Why has this group not called me and asked me to teach about girl power or business or anything else that I do? And I was feeling completely sorry for myself. And I went home and I remember again, another one of those thoughts passed through my head, which went like, well, why don't I offer a workshop and see what happens? And that's what I did. So I offered a workshop called How to Start an Amazon Business and Make Money Anywhere. And it ended up being the most popular workshop at this program. And that's what launched me back into teaching workshops and starting to give. And I offered a course. I'm doing consulting. I wrote a book. In order, all of this to share the experiences, the difficulties, the successes that I've had, so I could help other women entrepreneurs be successful also.
That's incredible. And that is exactly what we were touching on earlier with, money in the hands of women is used for good so often. And so is wisdom and experience. I feel like we're in a new era of women wanting to bring each other along and show the way and say, hey, here are the secrets. Here are the things. Like there's no secrets anymore. Let's just all rise. And it's so beautiful because there was an era of competition because we were modeling what we had seen in business culture for so many years with our big padded, shoulder padded blazers and things that we had to wear. Everything was so different. And so the fact that you're now able to just share this and use your inner work that you have honed over the years to bless so many people, it must feel so rewarding.
It does. It does. It really does. And it goes deep and deep and deep, right? And what I mean by that is there's that feeling of invisibility. So why you have to ask yourself, why do you feel invisible? And it has to do with value, right? Well, for me, it had to do with not feeling valued or not feeling seen in the world. And then you start giving value and you start being seen, such as I have been by podcasting, by doing workshops, by doing my videos and all the things that I do in the content. And then you start realizing that you don't need to fill that any longer, actually, that value that lack you felt before has been healed, actually. And that's my case now. And now I'm simply doing it because I want to do it and not really for the need any longer of needing to be visible any longer. So all of these, my point of what I'm trying to say is all business and the new business I am in now, which is the book, consulting, whatever, or my business Back From Bali, which is a product business. All business, whether you're service or product, to me is a PhD in self-development.
Oh, yes.
And that is really what it is. And that is why we should do it. And that is why I think women should be entrepreneurs for this reason.
And it feels so good waking up in the morning and getting out of bed and saying, ooh, what good can I spread today? What do I get to do today? And it's so different than maybe the feeling you had way back when you got off the plane, imagining having to go into your job. And also understanding that I really believe there are the different archetypes, right? Some people are meant to be entrepreneurs. Other people are meant to be supportive people in business. And the nice thing, though, is the fact that every beautiful entrepreneurial venture that starts is another portal for soul-led people to work as support workers and to be able to live their mission in elevating a greater purpose. Like it can be a really beautiful working atmosphere. And I'm so curious. I have so many questions. But one of them is, how has this impacted your marriage? Because you've been married how long now?
20, I have to do that math. 2021. We've known each other for 30 years. So 2021 is when we married. So it's less. We always do our anniversaries when we met each other. So let's just say we've been together for 30 years.
I love that so much. I met my husband in 92. So it's about 30 years, right? And
yeah.
Married 27, but like really, it's all the same. You've been together, you're together.
Similar also.
And it just sounds like he's so supportive of you. And through all of the things, like how are things different now than in the beginning? I mean, obviously we're going to change, we're going to grow, but the fact that you're still together speaks volumes, especially when some men are very supportive and other men may be kind of, they feel threatened when their partner starts to earn more, become successful.
I know. I did not have that. And I know what you just said is much more common. And that is also something I like to talk about too, because when you do become successful, your identity changes. And, how will your parents see you, or your best friend, or your husband, or your partner, whoever it is, will see you completely different. I remember the first podcast I ever did, my dad listened to, and he was like, was that my daughter? So your whole identity changes. In my case, Heinz I think it has to do with whether your husband is a very secure. I think it's secure in themselves is what I think, and that it doesn't threaten him if I make more money than him. So he is right now thrilled. I had mentioned at the beginning that I retired him. So we've been living in Switzerland for the last 20 years. So that was one of the things is he was working, he had a job, and I moved to Switzerland. And I always did want to come back to the US, but at the right time.
Yeah.
And the last couple of years was the right time because my business is doing so well. So I knew that I could actually retire him and support him. So this was a big thing. So I've asked Heinz to, first of all, leave his country, okay, and
Yeah.
second of all, to quit his job. And he did and has. And so we're now in this life together in the United States, being pretty nomadic right now. But he is really happy, because he's now starting something new. He's now training to be a life coach. That's what he's doing now. So he's going like in a whole new direction. And we're both took up pickleball. I don't know
I
if
love
anyone knows what it is.
pickleball.
Oh God.
It's so fun.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's the funnest thing I've ever done.
Oh,
So he is not a kind of man where that felt threatening to him, but I know that's not typical.
no, it's not. But and
No.
him being a life coach, how perfect, because really he's been in the trenches with you on an emotional level as you've navigated so much in your life over these 30 years. And like that in and of itself, and all of the stories and all the people you've come into contact with, like that is his training ground right there. I'm sure he's going to be such an incredible coach. I mean, I'm sure he
Yeah.
already is. Really, he'll just have the, certification. That's so
Yes. And
wonderful.
he's supported me. When I had my two businesses, he worked in engineering. So he supported me. He supported me financially. And it was really, you know, I had the luxury of being able to build my business because of the support that he gave me. And so now I'm giving him the support for him to do what he really wants to do because he did not love his job. So he's very grateful for that.
Well, the beautiful thing is seeing how this can happen, how it is possible. It gives so much hope, especially because what is age, right? So often we get caught up and we hear around us people talking about age. Well, I'm too this, I'm too that, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too this, I'm too that. When really, I mean, I'm feeling like, oh, 50, just getting started. Thank you very much. Right. And you are, my
Six,
goodness,
I
here you
just
are.
turned,
Like you really started the next level of your business in your 50s, which is phenomenal. And it speaks
yeah.
to what I've been sharing about with the women in my world about when we hit those wisdom years, when we hit our 50s, can be our prime income earning years because our brain chemistry is just beautifully paired and harmonious. We've got life experience. If people have been raising children, most of them hopefully are on their way. And so the responsibility now, all of that you've learned, you're able to use and catapult you forward. So
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
it's just the best is yet to come. It's so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's just actually even statistics. It's
Yeah.
between the age of 50 and 70 that the most businesses have owners that are between the ages of 50 and 70.
Yeah, there you go. The numbers don't lie.
They don't lie. And it's so true. This again, it's a mindset thing, isn't it? That, oh my God, I'm 39. I missed it. I can't change now. Or, oh my God, I'm 44. It's over. Or I'm 50. Well, I'm going to, be retired in 10 years. Why change now? We get into all of those thinking, or even I just turned 60. Why should I even try now? I'm going to go on Medicare in 5 years. So we have all of these ideas that are constructed that we don't need to follow.
We don't. So I want to
Mm-mm.
know from you, Is there a way to have your business serve you? Because you said like it doesn't, you have more free time. And instead of being a slave to your business, talk about what that looks like for you and what you teach others about that.
Yeah, I love this topic. So I think we can have a tendency to have our businesses run our lives. Absolutely. And as a business grows, that will happen. And so I've had to learn systems and operations and team building and things like that as well. So in my case, again, it got to a frustrating place where I was not experiencing the freedom that I wanted to be having any longer because I was working way too much. And I remember going again, I took some action. I went to a conference from Ali Brown, another one of my mentors.
She's amazing.
And she's amazing. She's amazing. And I went to a physical workshop that she gave. And there I remember meeting some other women who had multiple seven-figure businesses, and they were telling me they were working around about 10 hours a week. And I remember thinking, I want that.
Yeah.
And so the point of this is that we think we can't have those kind of things, but we can. That we have to remember that our businesses, the purposes of our businesses is to serve us, okay? It actually works for us. We are higher than the business, and we have to tell the business what we want it to be doing. And we mix this up all the time, that we're running after our businesses. So when you make a decision like that, or you see the possibility, because I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think, I thought there's no way that's possible that I could run my business on 10 hours a week. And until I realized it was possible. And there's been times in my business, even that I've been running it on 5 hours a week. It depends on the time of year and what's happening in the business. Businesses have cycles.
Yes.
And so what I did in that case, when I came back from Ali's workshop, I started to learn operations and what that means. And I'll just share what I did, because this was such a huge change in my business by doing what I did. And I just took out a Excel sheet and I started to type down every task that had to be done in my business. And next to it, who was doing that task now. And first of all, I think the first time I did this, I had probably 220 tasks on my sheet, on my spreadsheet. I'm an e-commerce business. There's a lot of steps to do what I have to do. And whose name was next to like a lot of those tasks, or most of those tasks, right? With my name was next to it. And you start to then understand why you feel so stressed and overworked. And this is really the first step in understanding operations and systems, isn't even knowing what it is. And so anyone who's listening to this who feels overwhelmed, I really suggest that you do this, that you get out your spreadsheet, if that's how I love Excel actually. And you just start to type down every task that you do and who is doing it now, and see if you can start removing your name and replacing it with somebody else's name, or somebody that you need to be potentially hiring.
That's wonderful. It's so actionable. And for people who are like just getting started, feeling like, well, for me to be able to hire that, it's going to cost this amount. So that means I need to increase my sales by this amount. It's actually very aspirational. So you're not only taking the action of saying, where am I at, but what do I need to do to be able to start removing my name, instead of, oh, it's too much. I don't know if I could do it. It's so step by step. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And what is one thing a female entrepreneur can do right now to increase their net? I'd love to hear about this.
It's understanding their income statement. So again, women business owners need to be money people. Okay. We need to love money, kiss money all over if we need to, and understand what our businesses are saying, because our businesses speak, and they speak through numbers. That's how they speak. All right. And so we need to really understand what an income statement is and what that means. So when we really look at what our expenses are and what's coming in, and the percentage that you've increased, advertising by 4% this year, and it's more than 1% last year, and there's been a 3% increase. All of these things have a huge effect on your bottom line. And in addition to that, using a system called Profit First. Highly recommend this book. It's by Mike Michalowicz, Profit First. And it's a system of buckets, basically, of when money comes in, that what you do with that money is you actually pay yourself first. And using this system is a complete game changer to my life. So how you improve your net is understand your income statements and start using the Profit First system. You do these two things, you will have a completely different business a year from now.
I totally agree. That's an amazing system. So many people I know use it. And my husband is in finance. He's an accountant. So I'm fortunate to have in-house assistance with all of that. But there is this understanding that it can feel so big and so difficult to manage. But that program just simplifies it right down. So thank you for mentioning that. That's amazing. I love when it just comes up and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. All these successful people are doing similar things.
Yeah.
Success leaves clues. It is so, so true.
No, I love that. That's such a great little line. Success leaves clues. Love it.
Oh, I didn't make it up. I think, did Tony Robbins say that? I don't know. Somebody said that, somebody who's been saying it for a while. And I love remembering it, though. It is helpful. And so in the work that I do of strategic self-care for impact-focused women where their business is their baby, and it comes first, so often their health can take a back seat. And so I love helping women really dive into caring for themselves first so that they can actually have more time for other enjoyable things and need to put less time into their business. All these things you've shared are like tactical ways to do that. But you also talk about something called empty time. And I can't wait to hear what you share about this because it sounds a lot like self-care to me.
Yeah, totally. I've always been going for 30 years. I've been going to a spiritual retreat in New Mexico in the summertime. In fact, that's where I met my husband, Heinz.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And what I noticed is that while I was especially really building the business, when it was going, so this is, basically the last 12 years, okay, where the business or something like that, 12, 13 years where the business has really grown. I continue to go to a spiritual retreat and take 6 or 7 weeks off in the summer. And to my amazement, my business continued to grow and grow and grow and grow. So I believe that in order to be successful in business, you need to stop doing business. And, it is as important as putting, the pedal to, your foot on the pedal and going full speed ahead. Because, we need to, self-care. It's love, right? It's self-love.
Yes.
Okay. It's basically, that's really what it is loving ourselves and putting ourselves first before anything else. And I love to call it empty time. And empty time is actually not vacation time. So like going to Africa and on a safari, which actually is what I did in June, is not empty time. As wonderful as that trip was, and it was mind-blowing, vacations are not empty time. So empty time is your time where you could really empty out, whatever that means to you. I love to journal. That's also my empty time. I love being in nature. I know you do as well, Sheila.
Yeah.
Hugging trees.
Mm-hmm.
I personally literally go on retreats in the summertime. All of these things are empty time. We need time in our mornings or before we go to bed. Even if you take 3 minutes or 5 minutes and just close your eyes and just be with yourself in any way you want to be with yourself. I also do meditation. So one of the easiest ways to meditate is I just wake up in the morning, and before I get out of bed, I just plop myself up in bed and I meditate.
That's what I do too.
That's how you do too?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. Oh,
And
it fills you up so much because then when your feet hit the ground, you're truly grounded for
yeah,
whatever happens when you open that bedroom door. And in my case, I have teenagers and they're fabulous. But, recently one of them was ill. And so it's like, okay, things are going to shift today, but I'm grounded to be able to make those shifts instead of, oh my gosh, I haven't had time for me. No, I have. I've made that time.
yes, that's right. It's taking time for yourself and feeling yourself. And then it relates to what I call key number one, which is wanting it. And key number, 7 is taking empty time, because if you don't take empty time, you won't know what you want. You won't be able to take those next steps of what you want. So it's as important as all the tactical action steps that we do.
It truly is. And also knowing, my goodness, the past several years, people really saw when everything started to pivot and shift. They were forced in many cases to shift and pivot. You don't know when you need to make those changes unless you're really spending that time with yourself. So it's a gift to you personally, to everyone in your midst, and to your business and future success.
Yeah.
So I love that that is one of the important keys in your book. I look forward to seeing it when it comes out. When is
Thank
the
you.
publishing date?
Probably is going to be late spring 2023.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, I
Going to make
encourage.
sure to let me know and send me an update and I will make sure everyone knows about it. Perhaps we can have another conversation on Instagram or something and just kind of, share it with the audience again. That would be wonderful.
I would love to do that.
This has been such a beautiful conversation, and I'm so grateful that you joined me today. And I'm celebrating your success. I'm celebrating the way you banked on yourself. And I'm celebrating how you are unapologetically living this beautiful life of lavish abundance, doing what you love, talking about your numbers and guiding other people by your example to be able to feel good to do the same thing. Like this is where it's at. I'm so grateful that you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. That touches my heart. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, everyone who's listening, the best way to get this beautiful podcast episode out is to share it with your friends, to tag us on social. All the show notes, all the links will be in the show notes. And let us know what one key landed with you today the most. What is the next step you're going to take to actually feel into and live into what you most need to be doing in your life, in your business to create the future that you most desire. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on another episode. Big blessings.